To Senator Roberts now, please.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you all for coming this morning. Chair, I'd just like to make a brief statement in response to some communication you received from the CFMMEU Mining and Energy Division from the Hunter Valley before asking my questions. On 24th of October 2019, the General President of the CFMMEU Mining and Energy Division wrote to you to tell you how good they were, but for the record, they forgot to tell you that they colluded to sign off the agreements that have caused so much harm to casual workers at Mount Arthur mine and up to 50 other sites in Australia, including a 40% wage disadvantage. And Chair, the CFMMEU Mining Division in the Hunter Valley also acceded to Chandler McCloud in April 2015, and I quote, to cease from any current and future actions and claims directed towards ventilating and agitating its view that employees currently engaged by Chandler McCloud companies as casuals to perform black coal mining production work may be entitled to leave and other entitlements. The CFMEU gave them a free pass. Shame on the CFMMEU division and also Joel Fitzgibbon, the member for Hunter, because they have been diverting attention from the real issues hurting workers and preventing action, not only not doing anything about it, but preventing action. My first question, Mr. Hare, executives from your office met with Senator Maurice Payne, and I thank you, Senator Payne, for your interest and your support. It met with Senator Maurice Payne and myself on 26th of November 2019, where we noted that the disadvantaged workers' claims were proven right by your office. And we appreciate the fact that you went into that thoroughly legally to get that advice. Since then, what have you and your department done to right these wrongs and the wage theft that BHP, Chandler McCloud and labour hire companies have perpetrated?
Senator, I'm not sure whether my officers actually attended the meeting.
It was the Attorney's Office.
It was actually officers from the ministerial staffers from the Minister for Industrial Relations office who attended that. My understanding is that we've received some information from a number of people which we've then passed on to the Coal Long Service Leave Board. I understand they're appearing today, but the advice we have from them is that they've been in contact with the relevant parties and they've sought their permission to undertake further investigation, including looking at whether there has been an underreporting of the hours from those firms. So more detail might be available from Coal Long Service Leave Board a little bit later in the day.
We'll be pursuing that extra detail in that session. And I understand that many of the issues we raised are state issues, but I just wondered whether or not anything could be accessed through the Attorney General's Department to put pressure on the state to fulfil its responsibilities. But moving on, similar topic but a broader scope, is the Attorney General aware of the significant cost of remediating the errors of this entitlement offsetting mistake? One company has stated that their liability for their reliance on similar errors in flawed enterprise agreements is around about $120 million.
So, Senator, I'm not aware of that claim. I might go back to your previous question, if that's all right. So, in terms of the allegations of fraud, it will be incumbent on the Coal Long Service Leave Corporation to deal with such allegations in accordance with the PGP Act and the associated PGPA rules. Rule number 10, the fraud rule, deals with breaches of the fraud rule which may attract criminal, civil, administrative and disciplinary remedies. To the extent that any evidence of fraud is uncovered, the Department will also take appropriate action in accordance with the fraud rule and the Commonwealth Fraud Control Policy, which includes reporting suspected fraud or misconduct to the Governance Office in the Department and following the procedure of the fraud investigation and response. In relation to statements about the difference in payments, it is the case that it's possible that two different agreements, or indeed an agreement and the award, will vary significantly from each other. So the baseline being the award, which you can't go below, and then agreements can be negotiated above that. So it is entirely possible that you will have a difference between an award for one firm and an award for an enterprise agreement for one firm and an enterprise agreement for another firm.
Thank you. We have three goals for the mess that BHP has allowed to happen and in some ways created. One is to make sure that all the workers involved receive their fair entitlements and compensation for the abuse and trauma that they have suffered. Second aim is to stamp out this nonsense across the industry. And the third one is to bring the perpetrators to justice. And I can assure you that we will not, in One Nation, we will not be letting go of this injustice that affects many everyday Australians until our three aims to support these disadvantaged workers are met. The integrity of the federal LNP government rests on whether it can sort out wage theft and the rip-offs of many hard done by workers that One Nation is standing beside and for. Do you understand our commitment, and do you join us to protect workers?
Well, Senator, I think I have indicated, and senior advisors to the Attorney-General and Minister for Industrial Relations have indicated that your concerns and those of the constituents, who are my constituents, that you brought to the Parliament are a matter of concern for us. And we will continue to pursue these issues as we need to. I'm sure you will bring them to our attention to do that. I am concerned about the matters which were raised by the individuals that I met with. That is why I asked the support of the Office of the Minister for Industrial Relations and Attorney General to pursue those. And I'm happy to indicate I'll continue to work with you on that.
Thank you. Is there any way of lawfully bringing pressure to bear or drawing attention to the New South Wales State Government to fulfil its responsibilities to protect these workers? Because we agreed that many of the issues are, in fact, state. But you have connections with them.
Senator, I will take that up with the Attorney and Minister for Industrial Relations. I agree that many of the issues are state-related, and I'll endeavour to see what we can both do in that regard.
And this next question is somewhat open because I appreciate your concern and your interest that brought you into it, but everyday Australians like Simon Turner have been abused now for about 5 years, and that's long enough. So when do you think they can expect to be compensated? It's a very broad question because the animal is itself ill-defined.
Indeed, and it crosses, as you have already noted, Senator, jurisdictional boundaries between the Commonwealth and the state, and multiple entities and pieces of legislation. I don't think I can put a timeline on that, but would say that in terms of supporting a constituent and in terms of ensuring that appropriate treatment is rendered to individuals that you have identified and any others who may be in similar circumstances. That is obviously a very important thing to do, and one which I have indicated I will continue to support.
Thank you. Next question is that BHP seems to have been able to engineer lower than award rates, substantially lower than award rates of pay for casual mine workers in coal areas, including the Hunter Valley, by utilising a sham casualisation through the use of contractors like Chandler McCloud. What is being done to prevent this two-tiered, that's BHP, Chandler McCloud Group, wage theft that is deliberate, blatant and egregious, and that the work situation is basically unlawful, immoral and unethical? What have you done to prevent this happening again, this two-tiered wage theft?
Senator, so without being explicitly across the different enterprise agreements between BHP and Chandler McCloud, as I said before, it is entirely possible for enterprise agreements across different firms to have different wage outcomes. There is no requirement that enterprise agreements be the same across industry. It's up to the individual firm and the bargaining representatives to actually determine what the enterprise agreement looks like and the value within it. So, as I said before, technically it is possible that Chandler McCloud and BHP will have different payment arrangements or different payments. In terms of the claim that they're below award, again, without having any detail, The broad principle is if they are an employee, they are not able to be paid below the award. If they have been identified as contractors, again, that would be, as I said in a previous answer, that would be a matter for the courts to determine if that's an appropriate or that is the real arrangement. I'd also note that the Fair Work Ombudsman has been provided with an additional, I think it was in the order of $10 million in the last budget to tackle sham contracting, and sham contracting is where someone is described deliberately as a contractor when, with full knowledge of the employer, they are actually employees. That is an offence under the Fair Work Act, and firms and individuals can be required to pay a penalty for that if that's proved. So, again, without having the detail of the matters in front of me, there are arrangements where individuals can contact the Fair Work Ombudsman if they believe they're in a sham contracting arrangement, and I would certainly encourage anybody who believes they're in a sham contracting arrangement to contact the Fair Work Ombudsman. If they are an employee, they should not be being paid below the award. And again, if they believe they are, I would encourage them to contact the Fair Work Ombudsman. That's the statutory authority that has the responsibility for enforcing the Fair Work Act in this regard. However, if they are actually on enterprise agreements, which differ, as long as those enterprise agreements have been and if they've been signed off by the Fair Work Commission, then they are lawful.
There is a substantial blight on our country's industrial relations situation or scenario if this is not addressed. So I suggest you have, and I thank Senator Payne for acknowledging that, but this goes to the heart of integrity in our industrial relations situation, that a company like BHP can walk into the Hunter Valley and treat first world country people like Australians in a manner that a third world country has been exploited. And it's just abhorrent to see this continuing. And so we need to stamp out this abuse. Now, moving on, Mr. Hare, the Tier 1 construction, the Tier 1 construction companies have cosy deals with the construction unions to buy industrial harmony cheaply to them, but at the cost of 30% higher construction costs to infrastructure like Cross River Rail in Brisbane. Yet the Victorian Labor government's regional rail link project seems to be a solution for Tier 2 companies to deliver these projects. Are you aware of the situation in Victoria with the regional rail link?
Senator, I'm not across the detail of any of the enterprise agreements within the regional rail link for the Tier 2 firms there.
It's not just about enterprise agreements, it's about making sure that there's fair competition so that the Tier 2s can get a hold and undo the stranglehold that Tier 1s have had. And that goes to the heart of some of the industrial relations problems. What is the ACCC and the government doing to address this rip-off of billions in taxpayer money?
So, Senator, in relation to Commonwealth-funded works, which is where the limit of our power rests, there is a requirement that building companies comply with the Building Code 2016 and for work prior to that 2013. That code has quite specific arrangements or requirements in terms of the companies, what they can, what they should do, both in terms of safety but also in terms of their agreements. And I might pass to Ms Anderson, who can give you the detail of what the requirements within the code are, but the code is intended to stop arrangements which limit the ability of the building company to manage their own business.
I've lost my... There we go. Senator, I might just sort of address the point that you raise around the contracts, and note that the government at the moment has a discussion paper out on the building code, and specifically that discussion paper is asking various questions of stakeholders, particularly around access to government work. So we're specifically asking stakeholders whether we can do more through the building code to ensure that second tier companies, regional companies and small business contractors can actually access Commonwealth funded work. So we're certainly alive to ensuring that people aren't, particularly small to medium operations, aren't being excluded from government work through the access to the building code.
You're aware then it's a serious problem because these foreign-owned Tier 1 companies have got a strong stranglehold on it at the moment in major construction projects, both private as well as Commonwealth.
So I don't know the exact breakup, but we're certainly aware that we'd like to ensure that Tier 2 regional companies, small business companies are getting access to government work, and that's what we would like to look at through this discussion.
Some of these Tier 2s are in the metropolitan areas, the capital cities. Have the industrial relations laws, particularly in relation to enterprise agreements, enabled anti-competitive behaviours by either employer organisations or unions or both? And if so, what is being done about it? Because we want fairness for all and protection for all workers.
It's probably fairly broad question.
It is.
So certainly the Fair Work Act intention is to try and ensure that there's a safety net in place in terms of either the minimum wage or the award system, and that covers in the order of 2.3 to 2.4 working Australians in terms of ensuring there's a minimum payment required. And of course we have institutions such as the Fair Work Ombudsman to enforce those laws. In addition to the award system and the minimum wage rate, the Fair Work Act is designed to encourage bargaining at a firm level, and that what we see there is quite good wage growth through bargaining processes for workers. So the Act itself has enforcement mechanisms. It sets the minimums that need to be there, or the framework within which minimums need to be determined, recognising it's actually the Fair Work Commission that determines both the award, the actual conditions within the award through its hearing process, but also it sets the minimum wage rate. So the framework has an independent umpire to set the awards and minimum wage rate, and then it has an independent statutory body to enforce it, to make sure that people are being paid appropriately in accordance with the industrial instrument that they work under. So the framework is there, and certainly the bargaining process is intended to make sure that parties bargain in good faith and fairly to achieve wage outcomes and productivity outcomes.
I might just, in relation to the competitive behaviour too, the code also expressly requires that a code-covered entity must comply with the Competition and Consumer Act as well.
Yeah, that's where my last question is going to, Chair. Industrial relations laws are being used to lock out competition. I had talks with Mr Rod Semmes back in 2017. What is the progress of the ACCC's examination of this issue? He was pretty keen to examine it, and I think your department, sorry, the predecessor to your department was pretty keen to examine that as well.
So I'd need to take on notice any discussions we've had with the ACCC, but you might be better off directing the question directly to the ACCC. They're not one of our portfolio agencies.
No, I understand that.
Thank you,
Chair.
Senator Roberts. And I'll go back to Labor.